please welcome to the stage co-director of Thinking the Unthinkable, Mr. Nick Gowing.
The 11th of September 2001. Where were you that day? What do you remember when the first vivid images and the first vivid reporting came in from New York City and then Washington? I remember I was on a number 72 bus heading for BBC Television Centre, about to start my presentation shift. It took on a whole new series of realities. How we unpicked the chilling video. Was this a movie? Was it a Hollywood movie or something far more serious? Were unthinkables really taking place? Were they unraveling in front of our eyes in the way that many of you will remember? A member state of NATO, then 19 nations, the alliance appeared to be under attack. Already horrific dimensions were unfolding before us. But on a scale unknown, how did the alliance cope? That's what we want to do in this storytelling. Was it a declaration of war by enemies unknown and unstated at that time? Should Article 5 be invoked? The NATO Secretary-General was Lord George Robertson, coming to the end of his second of 5 years as Secretary-General. He, along with all the NATO ambassadors, was at the regular Tuesday informal lunch in NATO headquarters, preparing for the NATO Council the next day. One of his security detail came in and told him what was happening. For this storytelling of how NATO handles a massive crisis, here's Lord George Robertson.
Hello. And welcome. Thank you for being here and for listening to a story. As I'm constantly reminded, part of history, not part of current affairs. But that's the fate of those of us who are in the political business as well. So I just want to say that they say 50% of this audience is under 30. So just let me say to you that I started my political career, I think 58 years ago, demonstrating against the arrival of American nuclear submarines in the River Clyde in Scotland, and look where I ended up. So that should give you hope, or maybe put you off at the same time. The morning of the 11th of September 2001 was, for most of us, just an ordinary Tuesday morning. The ritual in NATO is that every Tuesday, the ambassadors, the mighty permanent representatives to NATO, meet for lunch to prepare for the following day. There's no interpreters there, it's informal, it's off the record, and it's a free discussion takes place. So to have it interrupted by one of my bodyguards was something quite exceptional. And to say that a building in New York had been hit by an airplane was clearly a matter of some shock. So we thought, well, you know, accidents happen, these things happen, and we continued with our discussions. For a bodyguard to come in a second time was almost complete sacrilege, but to say a second airplane had hit a tower, we knew things had changed. We abandoned the lunch, we went back to NATO headquarters listening to the BBC World Service. On the way, we arrived there, and we, like the rest of the world, watched horrified as the pictures were relayed from New York of what was happening there as well. And I think Nick Gowing was actually presenting the BBC that day, so we were watching him and listening to his commentary. So the circle has come fully round as well. And then I became conscious, as we all did in the room, that we were not just onlookers. We weren't just ordinary people watching with horror and shock at what was happening on the other side of the world. We were in a military headquarters, and we were on the flight path to Zaventem Airport as well, and who knew what was going to happen next after what was happening in New York. So we ordered that non-executive staff left the building. We convened a meeting of the ambassadors, all of the ambassadors immediately, to look at the situation and express our solidarity and shock and our horror and our sympathy with the American people at that time. And then discussions started to take place. And overnight, we thought, is this the subject for Article 5? And there were people who say, come on, that's not what Article 5 was for. It was for a Soviet invasion of Europe. That's what it was meant for, not a terrorist incident in America, especially when we didn't even know whether it was domestic or from foreign reaches as well. But the debate went on, and I certainly said, look, this is an attack on an ally. My view is that we are going to declare Article 5. And overnight, Assistant Secretary General Edgar Buckley and my Chief of Staff, John Day, prepared a statement. The following morning, we consulted with the Americans. We consulted with some of the key allies. We had a statement there in embryo. But still the worry, still the controversy was there. But I have to say I asserted that we had to do it. I went that morning to speak to the foreign ministers of the European Union. Nobody asked a question, and we felt it would have been improper for us to raise the issue of Article 5 at that stage with them. Came back to NATO headquarters and prepared the statement and got ready for the North Atlantic Council. We convened a meeting of the ambassadors at 3:30 in the afternoon. I said to them, there is the statement, the draft statement. Take it back to your capitals. It cannot be changed, not even by one word. And I want you back here at 8:30 in the evening with the answer from each of the capitals. And I then went back to my office and I phoned up prime ministers, foreign ministers, presidents in the various countries to point out the urgency and the importance of what this meant for the alliance as a whole. Now, I have to tell you that I am a politician from the west of Scotland. You know, Scottish politics, even today, is a pretty rough house. So I had to use all of my skills, all of my persuasiveness, in order to be able to make sure that not one of the other 18 countries in the alliance thought, postpone it for a day, change a paragraph. But at the end of the day, and remember, even in one country, I spoke to the whole cabinet through the foreign minister's mobile phone. And at 9:30 in the evening, we had an agreement from all 19 countries to the statement. And I then went to the press conference in the NATO building, absolutely packed, and I read out that statement. And I've got a copy of it here today. I read out these words. The Council agreed that if it is determined that this attack was directed from abroad against the United States, it shall be regarded as an action covered by Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which states that an armed attack against one or more of the allies in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against all of them. So, for something like 48 hours, I had been working, talking, cajoling, negotiating, arguing. And really, it was only as I read out these words, standing at that rostrum in this packed press conference, that even I woke up to the significance. This mighty alliance of nations, years old, having been born in order to defend Europe against a potential Soviet invasion. Here it was, on the 12th of September 2001, invoking Article 5, the self-defense component part of the Washington Treaty. And the import of that was very, very significant. Around the world, it was a signal to the American people that this alliance was standing by them at a time when they were under attack. It was a signal to the Europeans that they were on the side of America, that they were on the side of the free, ordered world, and that NATO meant business. And it was more important than all of that, probably. It was a signal to the criminal killers in the caves of the Tora Bora Mountains in Afghanistan that NATO was alive and was well and was standing by the people that they had attacked. They could hide And they did hide, but they could not get away from this mighty alliance at this time. And I think that was such a powerful moment in the world, a powerful moment for NATO. The founding fathers of NATO were so worried about the viability of the NATO alliance and what it might mean that they actually put a break clause of 10 years into it. Wouldn't they be surprised at this birthday party today that we are now 70 years old? And here we were declaring Article 5 because one of the allies, the biggest ally, the most important ally in the alliance had been attacked, and we were standing with them. On that day, and with these words, NATO changed completely, and so did the world. NATO was in business, and the world was a better, safer place as a consequence. Thank you very much for your attention.